So in this video, we are going to look at whether or not the ugly duckling and the frog princess fit the description of a rebirth story. The description states that the story almost always has a threatening shadow that seems nearly victorious until a sequence of events leads to redemption and rebirth and the restoration of a happier world. So that means that at the beginning, there's something bad that's happening. There's some spell that's been cast, something that is not quite right for the main character, something that needs to change, and they're not sure whether it's going to change or not. And it might be that they feel that that state for them is going to be something permanent. There is then a sequence of events, so things happen, and on that journey of events happening, it leads to redemption and rebirth. Something changes, there's some form of transformation, and then there's the restoration of a happier world. So due to this restoration, this transformation, there is then a restoration of a happier world, which means that we usually, hopefully, in a rebirth story, have some kind of happy ending. So let's see if our stories fit with this model. So, of course, the rebirth story, at the very beginning of The Ugly Duckling, the duck is born to a family of ducks, but does not fit in. For some reason, the duck does not look the same as the other ducks. He's not treated the same as the other ducks, and he can't do the same things that the other ducks can do. He can't quack properly. He looks different. He's grey. He's not the same colour, and he's larger. He's a different size. So the main character is in a state of sadness. He doesn't fit in with what he thinks is his family. And things get so bad that he decides that he's going to run away. Runs away, and if we remember, he runs through the marshes, and this makes him even dirtier. So he's tall, gangly, grey feathered, dirty, grubby. Now, we know that at this point, he tries to make friends in some versions of the story with other families. So he tries to make friends with other duckling families, but again, they won't accept him either. They just keep saying the same thing. You're too ugly. You don't look right. There's something strange about you. And so he feels compelled to have to leave. Now, in our story, the duckling eventually finds a family of geese, and these family of geese, although they are unkind to him, take him in. So the geese take in the duckling, and he has some similarities with the goslings. That makes him feel a little bit happier. So they take in the duckling and they look after him. That means that he survives the winter. So the family are looking after him. They're teaching him things, teaching him how to find food, and therefore he survives the winter. And then the winter turns into spring. And we see that the world then changes. The lakes unfreeze, and the world is transformed from cold, icy, hard to survive in, to one that has blossoms, trees, flowers, is a world itself often thought of the idea of spring as rebirth and new life coming back to the earth. So winter turns into spring, so very symbolic part of the story. He sees some swans. Now he thinks, doesn't he, that he won't be able to go and play with the swans because he hasn't got, he thinks, the same appearance. He thinks, well, I'm so ugly. The swans, the ducks didn't like me. I'm really ugly as a duck. The geese, they look after me, but, they still think I'm a bit weird looking too. And so he doesn't approach the swans. And then what happens? That's right, the swan comes to the duckling. So winter turns into spring, he sees some swans, and then the swan comes to the duckling. And what does the swan say? The swan says, of course, you look beautiful. You look beautiful. And he goes to live with his new swan family, concluding in the fact that he then lives happily ever after with them. So we can see, okay, let's see if it fits the model. So the story almost has a threatening shadow. Okay, so the threatening shadow is he was born different. It doesn't look the same as the family that he was born into. The conclusion here possibly is that for some reason the swan egg got into the nest of duck eggs, which was why there was a confusion and why the egg didn't hatch at the same time. So possibly an answer as to why. And then he runs away and the geese take him in. Okay, so let's see, is that our sequence of events that lead to redemption? So he was able to survive the winter because the geese took him in, so there's some redemption. And then we have the rebirth event, which is where he doesn't realise, but over the winter his feathers were transforming and he doesn't notice this until some other swans come over and point it out for him. And he looks into the lake and he sees that his feathers have changed into this beautiful white. And he is, in fact, a beautiful white swan, and that he was never a duckling in the first place. And then he goes to live with his new family and he lives happily ever after. So I would say that the Ugly Duckling story appears to fit the model of a rebirth plotline. The next video, we're going to look at the Frog Princess. So if you've read The Ugly Duckling as your book, as your story, then what I want you to do now is I want you to go and make a poster describing the features as you've seen here, and also explaining how that fits in with your story. How does these events in the story of the Ugly Duckling make it a rebirth story? I'd like you to make a poster about that to help you remember the features. If you are not doing the Ugly Duckling and you're doing the Frog Princess, I'm going to do that in the next video.